Even though the blue belt is the first cool promotion that you get in jiu-jitsu, it's still riddled with questions and confusion. If you're a white belt, transitioning to blue belt, or you're already a blue belt, I've got some fantastic tips that can really change your game. They've helped me and I know they can help you. Let's jump in. Tip number one, giving your opponent multiple threats to consider. As we transition to blue belt, I believe you should be learning to give your opponent multiple threats. As white belts, we're learning certain submissions, we're trying to learn the setups, but I believe, at least from my experience and what I see as a coach, that most white belts are very two-dimensional with their approach to submissions. A lot of times, we're just straight up attacking the submission at 100% speed without any submission, right? And although I do want you to focus on jumping on submissions when you see an opportunity, a lot of times, especially when you transition into blue belt, those opportunities start to dwindle, right? As a blue belt, you're facing other blue belts and even higher. The higher you go into the belt system, the less opportunity you're going to see in finding submissions, which means the more you're gonna have to focus on setups. So, what I like to do is I like to present multiple threats to my opponent. As you can see here, I'm on my helper in mount. What I like to do is take his brain away from the possible threat of the submission I want, and instead I will make him think about maybe a fake submission or a fake threat. As you can see here, I'm in mount and looking for a mounted triangle. Now, if I'm with a white belt, sure, can I just shoot the triangle? Probably. If I'm with a blue belt or higher, I'm gonna need to set this up, and I wanna take his mind away from what I want. I do this by dropping a lot of my weight into the tip of my elbow, jamming that into the sensitive part of his shoulder. Now, what this does is it makes him think about that pain, and it takes his mind away from what I'm actually trying to do, which is the mounted triangle. A lot of times, we can feel that our opponent starts to address that elbow. They start to C-clamp, they start to try to push away, they try to adjust their body to relieve the pain. Now I know your mind is where I want it, and that's when I shoot my triangle. This is a concept that you can see all over the place in jiu-jitsu to create pain to distract your opponents from the submission you want. I just want to take a quick break to give my sponsors, X Martial, a shout out. Not only does X Martial have the highest quality no-gi gear for adults and kids on the market, they also provide workout equipment and training tools, everything from resistance bands to grip work to abdominal work. You name it, they got it. On top of all that, they also have the X Martial Charity Initiative, where they help bullied or underprivileged people get help with their training fees and free gear. You're not gonna find a higher quality company out there. So if you wanna look as good as me and probably even better, get over to xmartial.com, use my code IRONWILL to save yourself some money, and look good while you sharpen your skills. All right, well, I think that covers it. Let's get back to the video. Now, the other variation of this is to create dilemmas, or making your opponent choose which submission he's defending. You provide him a problem. The problem is two submissions at once, but he can only fight one battle at a time. So he defends one, he gets caught with the other. This is a dilemma, and you can also find this all over the place with your attack game. One of my favorite dilemmas to set up comes from shooting a triangle. Now, I did do a submission video previously where I talked about the slot machine. The slot machine is a great option from a failed triangle. So what we can do is shoot the triangle. If the triangle lands, perfect, finish the triangle. But if he respects the triangle and he's able to defend it, what I can do is transition to the slot machine, where I trap his elbow in the pocket of my hip and I take his palm facing him and take his arm laterally out. This slot machine is a shoulder lock, and it's very, very effective. Now, if he tries to defend the slot machine and pull his arm back through, one of two things are gonna happen. Either his arm is trapped and he can't get it back, and you finish the slot machine, or he gets his arm pulled through back into the triangle position and you can start working your triangle again. You're giving your opponent multiple submissions to deal with, but typically we can only fight one battle at a time, which is why we call these dilemmas, because eventually and inevitably your opponent ends up submitting. Again, just reiterating that this is more of a advanced technique to think about. It's good to start to wrap your mind around this as a blue belt, because by the time you get the purple belt, you're gonna be pretty proficient, maybe not your best yet. You're really gonna transition into that brown belt or even black belt, but it's good to get ahead of the game. I find that a lot of blue belts are still very two-dimensional with their attacks, just trying to jump on opportunities that they see randomly arise during their rolls, and you can really maximize your results by setting up submissions with pain compliance or setting up submissions with other submissions. Think about that as you move forward, and it'll elevate your game so much. This next tip, you don't know everything as a blue belt, is something that I personally dealt with, and I know I'm not the only one, but I think that probably around my second stripe, I started to feel like I've seen all the lessons, I've seen all the criteria, I knew everything, right? And that's obviously so far from the truth. As a blue belt, we're still beginners, we're still learning, we're still even finding our style at that point. So if you're a blue belt and you are feeling like you know everything or you've seen everything, I can promise to you that you haven't and you don't, and you just need another avenue to pursue, even if it's an avenue that your school hasn't taught you yet. So, have you started digging into leg locks? Have you looked into wrist locks? Have you looked into barambolos? There's all kinds of different avenues that you can take that are really fun, really cool to learn, and can be really useful for your journey. For me personally, I wasn't learning a lot of leg attacks back when I was a blue belt, so I took it upon myself to start learning a little bit more, and it really became an avenue that I started to love. It gave me a new beginning. It gave me another hill to climb. I think for many of us as blue belts, we get so attached to the idea that we're not a white belt anymore that we don't want to start over as a white belt on another avenue, right? We just work so hard to get rid of that dang thing, that white belt, that we want to stay a blue belt. But part of the beauty of jiu-jitsu is that you're never going to know all of it, and you can always start over on another avenue. If you feel like you don't want to be a white belt again in some other part of jiu-jitsu, that's just your ego talking, and that will always hold you back. You have to keep your mind open to being a beginner in certain things. If you only focus on one branch of jiu-jitsu, your jiu-jitsu is going to be very two-dimensional. You have to branch out. You have to be bad at certain things again, right? Even as a purple belt, I'm still learning brand new things. I'm getting promoted to brown belt on the 24th, which I'm really excited about. But I have to remember that I need to continue to pursue things that are new to me. If I want to continue to grow and develop as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I have to be bad at certain parts. I can't be good at everything. So I have to open my mind up and be ready to pursue things that are new. So trust me when I say you want to keep your ego in check. It will only hold you back if you listen to it. Don't be afraid to start over, try new side quests, be a white belt again in certain areas of your game, because that will always help you get much better than you already are. And that is a nice segue into our last tip about the blue belt blues. If you've been training jiu-jitsu long enough, you know that this is a very real thing where people will train throughout their white belt, they'll work really hard, and then they get to their blue belt and they disappear. And I'm not gonna stand here and try to dissect why every single person quits at blue belt, whether it's family stuff, work stuff, or you really feel like you know it all. It could really be a multitude of things. One thing I would remind anyone who's deciding to quit at blue belt is that you are just entering your game. Things are just about to get good, right? You just got past the hardest belt in jiu-jitsu, which is the white belt, right? Because it's filled with confusion, it's filled with questions. You don't know what you're doing half the time, maybe even most of the time. You are now a blue belt, so you're starting to develop your game. You're finding out what you're good at. You're finding out what you're bad at. You're developing a style that works for you. And even though you don't know as much as you think you do, that's the beauty of it, right? Every time I learn something new, I also realize how much I don't know. You have to remember that as complex as jiu-jitsu is, and it's quite complex, it's also ever evolving. So you will never know everything. And to me, I find that to be a positive. That's a beautiful thing. It gives me something to pursue for the rest of my life. I will never know all of it. And that means I can always have fun with it. Now don't get me wrong, at blue belt, you are capable of beating the vast majority of the general population in a fight, but there is so much more that is coming your way. Had I quit at blue belt, I never would have learned stringing attacks together, setting traps, burning my opponent's cardio down just by being smart with my posture versus his posture. So many different lessons that come with your blue belt and beyond. So if you are tempted to quit at blue belt, I would just want to remind you that you're now coming into your game. You are now finding your style, and things are about to get so much better. Not only are you developing further as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but even as a person. There's so many different lessons that come with the blue belt journey that are going to help you in life, business, fitness, all of it. If you're having a difficult time as a blue belt, well, so is literally everyone else, okay, in their own way. And that difficulty makes it worthwhile. So continue to work hard, continue to challenge yourself. It's okay to be a beginner again. And most of all, find ways to have fun. Jiu-jitsu is a beautiful martial art. Is it complex? Absolutely. But at blue belt, it's just getting good. So continue to train hard, have fun with it, and you will be rewarded greatly. So with that, you guys know how we like to end them. Sometimes backwards, always forwards. I'll see you in the next one.